Welcome into the Important Nonsense YouTube Waiver Show. It's Jason Draven. We're going into Week 12 with Kansas City and Arizona going on a bye. It's going to be a tough week because we have games split all over the place. Thursday with Thanksgiving happening, it's going to be a big mess with Detroit facing Chicago. There's just so many options. I wish there were more options on the waiver wire, but as usual, we'll start off with the quarterback. And it's a guy who showed out last week, had a little bit of a showing the week before in Cam Newton. He is 40.9% rostered. He has the Dolphins this week, and then he is going on a bye. Granted, this was his first real week back this past week, and he went 21 for 27, 189 yards, and added 2 touchdowns. Oh yeah, and you know it's Cam, so he's going to rush. He did that 10 times for 46 yards and added another touchdown. In the past 2 weeks, even though he only played a handful of snaps in Week 10, he is quarterback 9. This is a guy that you want on your team and could definitely be a league winner. At this point in the game, you have to have him. The other player is a returner, but doesn't surprise me based on his past 2 performance, and Carson Wentz, 46.1% rostered, has the Buccaneers and Texans upcoming, and it's just been a rough go over the past couple weeks. He hasn't needed to throw the ball because they have just been blowing teams out. With the Jaguars, Taylor had a big day that week, and of course, this past week, you saw Taylor just explode all over the game against the Bills, where he only put up 10 fantasy points. Meanwhile, Taylor is putting up 50 fantasy points, so yeah, it's going to be hard. However, this week, it's a good matchup. He should have to throw, as the Buccaneers are not going to back down. We'll move into running back, and it's another name that is very familiar. It's Devonte Freeman, 33.8% rostered. He has the Browns and Steelers upcoming, and you hear the Browns, it's a tough run D normally. However, they just let Swift run all over him this past week, and that team looks broken without Baker Mayfield, who's been really struggling and dealing with a lot of injuries. Also, very quietly over the past 3 weeks, Devonte Freeman has become the running back 12. You can see his fantasy points here, 16.3 in Week 9, 8.8 in Week 10, and then this past week, he just had a great week with all of the receiving work and a touchdown, going for 20 fantasy points. This is a guy you want on your roster and can definitely help if you're getting thin and you've, let's say, lost Williams, CEH, and of course, Connor or Edmonds. This is a guy that can definitely plug in and play. The next guy is a little bit more surprising, but it happened because Michael Carter got injured. He is dealing with a high ankle injury and is likely going to be out for a while. I'm guessing 3 weeks would probably be my safe estimate. As I've really been focusing on giving the work to Michael Carter, I think Ty Johnson really slides in this role well. I am a little nervous with the return of Tevin Coleman, but I think his usage is more reliable, and the other backup quarterbacks have already seen used him and know what he's capable of doing. I just struggle to see Coleman having that same kind of role. We'll move into wide receivers here, and it's a name on that same team in the Jets, and it's Elijah Moore, 40.8% rostered. He has the Texans and Eagles upcoming, and you're going to say this, and I'm clearly late to the game, I guess. Week 9, 27.4 fantasy points. Week 10, 13.4 fantasy points, and this past week, 29.6 fantasy points. I really did not expect that coming out of Flacco, that he was going to hyper-focus on this kind of a threat. I really expected it to be more of a Crowder and Davis game, but Moore has really asserted himself and has become a wide receiver that you want on your team. So if he is available, go and grab him. The other one is another kind of quiet player that I've really been watching the connection with Mac Jones come about, and it's Kendrick Bourne, 15.7% rostered. He has the Titans and Bills upcoming, which are pretty decent matchups based on where he plays and how he plays. It should be a good week for him. He's only had one big week the past 3, and it's 24.1 fantasy points against the Browns in Week 10. He's one of the more consistent players. He's going to not absolutely destroy your team each week, but he's going to get around 6 to 7 fantasy points. Not great, but he does have the chance to find the end zone. We'll go ahead and move into tight ends, and speaking of injuries, it's Juwan Johnson. And the reason being, with Troutman being sidelined 4 to 6 weeks, man, it's just been so incredible what Troutman has done over the past 3 weeks. 8.7 fantasy points, 8.2 fantasy points, 16.8 fantasy points. That's something that you are looking for in a tight end, and Juwan Johnson is only 1% rostered. With Troutman going out, this is going to be a huge opportunity for him, and we've already seen his hands. This past week, he actually had a touchdown called back, and it went to Troutman the very next play. So it's one of those opportunities, and the fact that they are facing the Bills, who really give you a funnel defense, allowing that center of the field be open, Juwan Johnson is a player that could easily become the one here and really have a success. The other guy is another returner that you have seen before and are so mad at because he put up a goose egg this past week, and it's Dan Arnold. He has the Falcons and Rams in the upcoming matchups, but however, even with that 0, over the past 3 weeks, he's tied in 12. Granted, there are still a game going tonight, but with that in mind, 10 fantasy points, 13.7 fantasy points, and in this past game, Jamal Agnew lands on the IR, which means there's more targets for him. This guy was clearly leading, and I'm not sure if the defensive scheme took him out or what happened, but we are really hoping that Dan Arnold bounces back. because he has been such a monster for fantasy and such a great asset. We'll move into defenses, and you're going to laugh because both of them aren't the greatest. However, first time on the list this year, and it's the Washington football team. They are 30.9% rostered, and the reason I'm saying that is because they're going up against the Seahawks this week, where Russell Wilson has just absolutely struggled. With that in mind, this team very rarely goes negative. As you can see, in week 10 against the Buccaneers, they put up 6 fantasy points. Pretty impressive feat. This past week against the Panthers, who just have Cam and did an excellent job, 3 fantasy points. They aren't going negative that often, and so it's a huge asset for your team and won't absolutely kill you. So if you're looking for a team that you really just want to be able to slide in and use, that's going to be one of them. The next one, you're probably going to laugh at as well, but it's the Falcons. 7.8% rostered. They have the Jaguars and Buccaneers upcoming, which is why you want them against the Jags, who can't really seem to have their own identity, which is the same issue that the Falcons have been having. So with that in mind, you look at their past couple weeks of production, 2 fantasy points against the Saints, 6 fantasy points versus the Cowboys, pretty surprising there, and 2 fantasy points against the Patriots. So I really think this team could easily put up 6 to 8 fantasy points and could be an awesome point getter for you guys. Now, as always, I really expect this game to be low scoring because it's the Falcons and the Jags. It's going to be ugly, and I don't really want to watch it. With that in mind, hope you all really enjoy this. If you need any other help, you can find me on the Fantasy Life app, or more importantly, subscribe to the Discord. It's only $1 a month. And until next week, remember to keep up the nonsense.